They build the people's car for the world, but tonight...
7 years ago, one of the biggest ever corporate scandals breaks over our streets.
Tonight, how the Volkswagen scandal has lifted the lid on emissions fiddling right across the world.
So let's be clear about this. Our company was dishonest. We have totally screwed up.
And if you think it's all over, it isn't now. Tonight we present exclusive new data which shows millions of vehicles rigged to cheat pollution readings 7 years ago are still driving around.
The key here is that millions of these cars are still on the roads today. That this isn't something that was solved years ago and addressed by manufacturers or by governments.
Today the ICCT, the researchers who played a key role in breaking the VW scandal, released a study on diesel pollution 7 years on. They found at least 77% of diesel cars had suspicious levels of nitrogen oxide, indicating the likely use of cheat devices in over 200 models across all major manufacturers. They say that means 19 million cars across the EU and UK with illegal levels of exhaust pollution. They pulled together evidence from government labs with their own testing in the real world, roadside curbs and exhausts. And this was done with hundreds of thousands of measurements across different models and manufacturers, all of it building up a startling picture of just how many diesel vehicles across Europe are still pumping out high emissions.
So we found that in the UK about 2.4 million remain on the roads today. And 1.7 million of those vehicles had excess emissions, so again 2 to 3 times higher at a minimum relative to the official emission limits.
It appears most manufacturers have not recalled and updated their tampered vehicles. A series of recent rulings by the European Court of Justice shows using these cheating devices is illegal, except in a very few circumstances. Today, the campaign group Client Earth launched a legal complaint to get the UK government to act.
What's so alarming about the present situation is we know that the auto manufacturers that have been responsible for putting excessively polluting vehicles on the road still haven't been held accountable. And that's what these legal complaints are about, pushing government to force manufacturers to actually provide solutions.
Tonight, the Department of Transport said,
"Abuse of the system is not acceptable. We have massively increased oversight of emissions tests in the real world as well as in labs, and are looking to bring forward stronger powers."
And there is a precedent for governments sorting it out.
The US government forced VW's hand to provide effective fixes to the vehicles that were affected by the scandal, as well as forced VW to pay almost $5 billion to contribute and fund wider clean transport solutions.
Currently, the UK does not meet the World Health Organization target levels for major air pollutants. Our poisoned air is killing us. Some of the deadliest pollutants are from dirty diesel exhaust.
The diesel exhaust is mostly like a soot. It's like a carbon soot. But it actually contains lots and lots of different chemicals here.
The nitrogen oxide which diesel exhausts pump out makes it hard to breathe and inflames the lungs. But they also emit particulate matter, creating a deadly cocktail.
That's right. So, I mean, the current figures suggest somewhere between about 28 and 36,000 people will die early due to air pollutants.
That's a reasonably sized market town dying every year just through air pollution.
It is. It's a public health emergency. So in this tube here, we have some tiny blood vessels, so a small segment of artery.
Right.
And what we want to know is what do the diesel exhaust do to the artery? So this is a healthy artery in green here.
Right.
So a nice relaxation over time. The blue is an artery where it's been treated with diesel exhaust particles. And you can see that this artery can relax a little bit, but just not as well as it should. So the artery would start to become diseased, the heart would get less oxygen.
Where do you go for your fresh air?
These children, part of a community project in St Paul's, Bristol, collecting air pollution data for a year to see how bad things are. They used the computer technique sonification, turning pollution data into sound, then music. The track Bristol Burning, with local voices and rap artist T. Relly.
Skies are falling.
It really anchors the message with the sonification, the sounding of the drone. We're being drowned out by something we can't see, but it's very prevalent. And I think let's not make pollution another thing that sort of sits hard on communities.
Where do you go for your...
It worries me because the world could die just because of this one thing. When I'm walking to school and there's lots of cars driving by and I can't really breathe. People could get lung cancer because of breathing in all of the dirty smoke.
When London banned dirty diesels, air pollution fell by a quarter. So how does the motor industry respond to tonight's research? The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders said,
"We cannot comment on test results from individual models. As the regulation and court ruling recognise, temporary suspension of some systems under certain conditions is necessary to avoid severe engine damage."
Volkswagen said,
"We cannot comment on the measurements published by the ICCT, as we know neither the condition of the vehicles nor the conditions under which the measurements were carried out. All Volkswagens comply with the legal limits of the emission standards that applied at the time of their initial registration."
They also dispute the validity of the research. But the EU welcomed it, telling us,
"This study is a reminder that the enforcement task of EU member states is not yet accomplished.
And
the Commission called on member states to carry out investigations into the possible presence of defeat devices in vehicles on their territories and to ensure that EU pollutant emissions standards were scrupulously respected."
And today the EU reminded all manufacturers it can enforce recall of any cheating vehicle with fines of up to €30,000 per vehicle. Drivers and manufacturers, you have been warned.